Witam Ciebie, witam wszystkich. Jesteśmy na warsztatach mięśniowo-powięziowego rozluźniania. Jestem tutaj Satyarthi, yes, it's correct?
Yeah. Okay.
Chciałbym Cię zapytać, żebyś opowiedział troszeczkę o tym, co tutaj robimy, o tym treningu, którego uczysz, o stopniach tego szkolenia, żebyś powiedział, na czym to polega, czego tutaj się tak naprawdę uczymy na tych warsztatach.
Okay, I'm teaching a training here in Poland in 4 blocks of 5 days, in 20-day training, which is a complete training to become a therapist in what I call myofascial energetic release. Myofascia meaning muscle and connective tissue, or the fascial system. How to work with pain syndromes in the body in a holistic way. So, as a body worker or a massage therapist, often people feel inadequate when somebody comes with neck pain, headache, low back pain, knee pain. They feel inadequate. They don't quite know what to do. And so many people are in pain. So it's a huge part of that, in this industry that we're in, is that people come for sessions to get out of pain. So I 20-day training and how to work with pain syndromes throughout the body. And I bring in each block and throughout the 4 blocks, I bring in different aspects of the work. I focus on deep tissue body work, where I work with the fascial system and the muscular system and teach the fascial how to work with it with our fingers, with the elbows, with the back of the hand, with the knuckles, even with the feet. I teach assisted stretches that come from the Ayurvedic yoga massage, where you stretch other people and stretch them with 36 different stretches throughout the body, which increases their range of motion. I teach a joint movement mobilization throughout the body, through the spine, through the hips, through the knees, through the feet, through the neck, through the arms. I teach a movement education, which is called myofascial unwinding, which I bring in throughout the course, which is the natural ability, innate ability for human beings to heal themselves. It's the healing power within that leads people to start to move like a cat stretches, like a wild animal in the jungle stretches, like you stretch when you wake up in the morning, without thinking, and then also just allowing the autonomic nervous system to start to release itself and find its own healing throughout the body and get movement where there was no movement. It's a soft but very powerful way of releasing the whole fascial system and bring movement in a pleasurable way. And then I teach some psychosomatic understanding and some emotional understanding of how, when you're doing body work, how to work with feelings. I teach 5 different keys of how to work with feelings. You know, to not see feelings as a problem. They're not a problem to be solved. Feelings are feelings. And to acknowledge feelings as they come up and try to catch them early. Yeah, see what they are and catch it early. And to find meaning in it, but meaning through the body, physical meaning. As I have my fingers in the diaphragm, I teach that when I'm teaching to work in a certain, and feelings start to come. What does it mean to you when I have my fingers here? How is that when I touch here? To make the meaning bodily, physical. And another part is to go with spontaneous behavior and to listen. When spontaneous behavior means if something is spontaneously moving through the body, or their breath shifts or emotions start, to immediately acknowledge it and be present to it. So the healer in my trainings, or the body worker in my trainings, has to be working together with the client. So I teach that. It's called a learning team, where you're not working on the client and they're receiving, but you're teaching them to participate, you're motivating them to participate in the work and to bring it home and to learn how to do the work on themselves at home through meditation, through unwinding, through breath. Yeah? So I'm teaching people how to work with people and how to get those people to a place where they can help people, to get the people who I'm teaching to be able to help people release their pain, get rid of the pain, and then take responsibility for it. Because who in the end is going to really keep the pain out of their body is the person who's the client. You have to teach them and motivate them to do it. So it's a different approach in that way for a lot of body work where people want to lie down and receive. You know, it's like, okay, you lie down, you receive, but how much can you participate? So it's a different approach. There's also a certain dialoguing that I teach of how to talk to clients during sessions, how to ask them the right questions, yeah, how to bring awareness to breath, how to bring awareness to touch, yeah, how to increase the physical, felt sense awareness. There's a lot more I could teach, to be honest, because 20 days is a good amount of days for a training, but it's also, you know, I used to teach 120 days, and there was a lot more to bring in. But that's what I found, that 20-day training, I can really teach people a holistic approach on how to work with pain syndromes and how to release the fascial system and integrate it to some degree throughout the body.
Chciałem się Ciebie zapytać, co robisz na co dzień? Jakie jest Twoje doświadczenie zawodowe? Co robisz w życiu?
I started doing massage and learning massage in California in 1969, 69, around then, where I took my first massage course. I was like 19 years old. And I found it immediately very interesting. But at the same time, I had been studying dance since I was 14 with the goal of being a professional dancer. And when I was 19 or 20, I became a professional dancer. I got into a dance company, an African jazz dance company in San Francisco, where I danced and performed and learned and kept dancing. After about a year of that, dancing, I didn't like it, really. It was something I wanted to do, but it was something that wasn't fulfilling me. So I stopped. And then I studied dance therapy with a woman named Anna Halperin, who was actually one of the originators of dance therapy. She lived where I did, and she was very kind of famous at that point, and she had a lot of people coming. And I studied with her for over a year and a half, and started doing, not performances, but rituals, dance rituals with her. And it made me more and more interested in body and dance as a way of learning about myself, as a way of self-inquiry, as a spiritual path, really. So I heard about Rolfing, structural integration. It was now 1971, and I heard about it, and I went and I got a Rolfing session in Esalen. I had 3 actually, and I thought, wow, this is my work. It really touched me deeply. Not just that it changed my body, but it did something in terms of my consciousness that was very, very powerful. And it made me feel more grounded, it made me feel more trust, it made me feel more pleasure and more space, more freedom. It gave me a sense of possibility, that life, that I could grow within, not without, but within. So that was actually in one of the ways the beginning, that and the dance therapy were the beginning of my search. And then I studied postural integration with Jack Painter in 1971 in San Francisco, and got 10 sessions from him. And that really affected me, even more than the Rolfing, really, because I was more committed. It had a huge impact on my personal consciousness, my energy system. I felt my energy was flowing in ways that I had never felt before. And then I thought, wow, I'm going to learn. I learned the work, and immediately I started giving sessions. And that was in 71 I started professionally, giving the 10-session recipe, or the 10 sessions of postural integration. And there was a huge, at that point, growth center around Osho in the 70s. I got there in 76. A huge growth center with some of the best therapies and body workers around the world would come and stay there then. And so I was lucky to be in that environment, really. Very arrogant, you know, I thought I knew. I just had a sense of arrogance, which I was unaware of. And Osho was working on me that way. He was basically hammering me, which I didn't understand at that point, but he was hammering me. My ego. And I was learning. The beautiful thing was there wasn't competition, not strong competition, between all the different therapists and body workers in the community, because nobody was working for money. Everybody was working to be with Osho and to live in the community. So there wasn't competition for clients or competition. So we shared a lot. So I learned a lot. I started working together with Rolfers, or structural integrators. And I started teaching with them. And in the teaching, I was learning, I mean, the postural integration was similar, but the Rolfing was more refined. It was definitely, the structural integration was more refined, the work. So I started learning from them a lot. Many different types of healers and body workers were there. Neo-Reichian was there, and I would learn from this woman. She would come into our trainings. We would bring lots of people into our trainings. Our trainings were 4 months, they were 120 days, and we would bring people in. And Osho told us to bring in also therapists, not just to do body work within the training, but also it was very important, he said, to have therapy in the training and to do meditation every day in the community and with the training, so that the consciousness of the people participating would change in the therapy. It changed with the body work too, but also psychological consciousness could change, or emotional consciousness with the therapy. So I did that in Pune 1, that was called Pune 1, because it was the first time Osho was in Pune. So I learned in that time, that 6 years, it was 6 years. I basically stayed there the whole 6 years. I learned really a lot, and also technically I learned a lot, because there was Alexander teachers, Alexander technique teachers, there was chiropractors, there was osteopaths, there were all kinds of different healers. Yeah, there was energy workers, there were the Rolfers, of course, there was the emotional workers and the therapists, psychological therapists. So I was learning from all the different angles, yeah, and incorporating in the work. And at that time, Osho said that the best way to do body work was to have a wide range of understanding, so that what people came to you, you could work with them in what was ever appropriate for them, and not put your system on them. It's really like it seems like an ongoing, lifelong lesson.
Whole life.
Whole life, yeah. I'm really learning how to do that. And sometimes I have breakthroughs in that, you know. I really have a breakthrough, and new possibilities start to open up. But the main thing, like with any type of teaching, the main thing is being passionate about the work. Because when I'm committed and passionate, then everything starts to come. And my energy is just so deep into it that it all starts to make sense, yeah? And when I work on a body, I'm very aware that I'm working on the physical body with deep body work or with joint work, but there's an emotional body in there, and there's an energetic body in there that I'm also touching and I'm making contact with. And so if I can focus when I'm doing the deep work also on that emotional body or that psychological body or that energetic body, it supports the person to start to open those parts of themselves within sessions. And then the work becomes much more holistic.
Poznałeś w trakcie swojego doświadczenia zawodowego wiele technik, które są typowo technikami, można powiedzieć, technicznymi, czyli nastawianie, chiropraktyka, osteopatia, a z drugiej strony poznałeś wiele technik, które pracują z emocjami, z duchowością, tak, są to takie, poznałeś dużo medytacji. Czy uważasz, że to jest kluczem do pracy, aby pozbywać się dolegliwości, traum, czy leczyć ciało i umysł?
I think that any body worker who's been practicing body work for a long time, professionally, starts to include numbers of different methods because they see that it's totally necessary in order to really work more holistically with the person. And what I mean by holistically is to be able to work more effectively with all the different parts of the person. So you named different systems, of work or different areas of work, which was the Rolfing or the integration, the deep tissue work. That's one area of the work which is my focus when I do this work, when I teach it and do the sessions. But I'm also very aware that one needs to learn how to work with joints. So that's what I started to do. I started to want to work with the joints in the body, not just work with the soft tissue, but also with the bones and the joints. So I learned the triggering method, the chiropractics and the osteopathic work, works with spinal alignment and spinal movement and their adjustments, whether, there's many different schools. But I learned from an osteopath, a Scottish osteopath, who was part of this Osho community. And I was working in the medical center there. We had a big medical center where it was a residential medical center where people could come. There was beds and everything. And I was working with people in pain, and he was also. And he just started teaching me. I was very interested. And he taught me a lot over a number of years, just about adjustments. And I learned the adjustments from him, and then I refined them. I kept studying with different people and who would share with me, and I refined the ability, and it's a beautiful tool to bring into deep body work along with the joint release, which I was sharing before. It's a beautiful tool to learn how to adjust the spine. Again, the barbers in India, you go and you get your hair cut for €2, and then they adjust your neck without even asking you, And so there's a lot of kind of fear that people have of that, and learning it and doing it. But when you see these people, they just do it, they don't think about it. And so it's not that dangerous. I don't teach it anymore. The emotional work is something that I'm very interested in relation to the deep body work, the fascial work. Because emotions are held in the anatomy. Yeah? Very much. They're part of the anatomy. In fact, they form the anatomy. And the fascial system is the connective tissue that wraps around all the different parts of the body. Every tissue of the body has a wrapping of fascia, or a skin of connective tissue. And the outer superficial fascia is right under the skin, the subcutaneous area. It's very strong. You can try to pull it apart if you do a dissection, and it won't pull apart. So it's very strong, like leather, some parts, which people don't realize. It's innervated with nerves, it's innervated with blood vessels. And the quality of that superficial fascia can be very tight. It has a lot of pain-sensitive nerve endings. And a lot of the pain that comes in the body comes on that more superficial area, you know, like the lumbar fascia and the cervical fascia and that wrapping around. Within the contraction of the fascia and the contraction of the muscles that the fascia wraps around and penetrates is emotional holding patterns, repressed emotions, repressed anger, repressed fear, repressed sadness, repressed joy, yeah, repressed feeling, which is held in the unconscious. And the whole culture is basically learned, all of us, all cultures, I travel all over the world, all cultures have learned that emotions, that feelings are not okay. That they're problems. Negative feelings are problems. And if you have a negative feeling, there's something wrong with you. And that's how we judge ourselves. So what happens then is it goes into it's not allowed to be expressed. It's not allowed even to be talked about very much. So it goes into the body, because where do we feel from? We feel from our bodies. Yeah, if we don't have feelings, if we don't have a body. So we know we're sad because we sense it in our chest or in our belly. Yeah, we know we're angry because we feel it in our back, in our shoulders, in our chest, in our neck. Yeah, and it has a certain sensation that tells us that this is anger, that tells us this is sadness, tells us that this is fear. So it's part of the body. The way that we stop feelings or repress feelings is by deadening the body. So when you deaden the body goes numb. It loses sensation. It loses awareness. And as in that numb state, the muscles and the fascia, the soft tissue, can get more and more tense through stress, through emotional stress, through the stress of work, through the stress of loneliness, of relationships, of life in general, just being a human being on this planet, trying to make it. And we don't feel it. We don't feel how much our body is holding on because we've numbed it out so that we don't have feelings. And pretty soon, we get so tense, as you see, many people are so tense in their bodies, and they don't even sense it. Because their body doesn't have life, it doesn't have radiance, it doesn't have feeling. Now with this deep body work that I teach and do, it starts to awaken sensation in the body. It starts to release the deep tension in the body. It starts to touch on some of these psychosomatic holding patterns and the emotional holding patterns and release the fascia, release the muscle. And with that, the body starts to wake up and we start to feel more. Yeah? And the pain that people have in their low back, in their neck, in their knees, the carpal tunnel, in the elbow, in the wrist, in the hand, yeah? All these pain syndromes and the migraines that people go around with, the pain syndromes go away. Because the cause of the pain syndrome, in my understanding and in my experience, is chronic contraction of this fascial system, of the muscular system in the body.
Chciałbym, żebyś powiedział, jak rozumiesz dwa takie pojęcia, które w Polsce albo są źle zrozumiane, albo często są nadużywane, a wydaje mi się, że do końca ludzie nie znają ich pojęcia, nie znają ich definicji. Że chciałbym Cię zapytać, co rozumiesz pod pojęciem bodywork i co rozumiesz pod pojęciem psychosomatyka?
Okay, bodywork is a manual therapy that you do with your hands, you know, you touch. It's a touch therapy. And there's a lot of different styles of bodywork. And they keep coming, new ones, you know, because there's a renaissance of it. But it's a touch therapy that works with releasing the body, releasing the body's energy, releasing the body's muscles and fascial system, working with the bones, working with the joints. With your hands, it's hands-on work. Yeah? And massage the same, but body work is a little different than massage. Massage is more on the surface of the body, a little bit more on the surface of the body. Deep tissue massage is deeper, but still, body work has a more therapeutic understanding that there's a change, a big change in the body's structure, how the body is formed, that it becomes more aligned. Or there's a change in the movement patterns of the body, like Feldenkrais, through the nervous system, yeah, or the Alexander technique, through bringing in new ways of seeing your body and feeling your body, and new imagery in the body, through lengthening through the spine, through the neck, through the head. The Alexander method, which I learned a lot about years ago, and through the joint work, the softer joint work that works with the bringing to coordination through the whole skeletal system and the nervous system of the body. So there's different styles of body work, but all of it is manual. And it's done usually on tables. Of course there's shiatsu and Ayurvedic techniques and Thai yoga massage, which is done on the floor. All body work. Ayurvedic yoga massage done on the floor, all body work. Yeah, so there's many styles. You know, then you have the energy work, which is a little different. You know, like polarity therapy and different types of very softer energy work where you're working with the energy system. The psychosomatic understanding is that the mind creates the physical problem. So, my understanding of people that come to me with low back pain, for instance, is that most of the time it's a psychological holding pattern that gets into their low back or into their neck if they come. It's almost 85% of the time it's that. And it's psychosomatic in that they're repressing emotion, and their mind has a belief or a defense against the feeling, and it won't allow feeling to come. So the body deadens, like I said before, it goes numb, and the tension builds and builds until it builds to a point where there's pain, where it registers as pain. And the pain can be extremely severe, as we know. But the base of it, the core of it, is a psychosomatic core, a psychosomatic influence that the mind is actually creating the problem. It's not that the problem isn't real, it is real. But it's that the mind is creating the contraction is creating the pain. Same with an ulcer, you know, in the stomach ulcer. It's creating through fear, through shame, through repression of energy, through repression of feeling. Yeah, it's in the fascial system that holding is disrupting the function of those organs, the colon, the stomach. Yeah? And therefore people get colitis or stomach ulcers or migraine headaches. It's psychosomatic.
Do you think the mind creates all the pain in our body?
That's a good question, and I don't think that the mind creates it all. No, I think that you can have an accident, you can get hurt, you can have an injury, a traumatic physical injury, and that can tighten everything up. You can sprain your ankle, you can, tear a ligament in your knee, you can have a meniscus problem. You could have a disc problem. It's very rare that the disc causes pain, but you can, it does happen, and that also very much contributes to the pain. Okay, there's something more about the psychosomatic understanding of physical pain in the body, is that in the late 80s into the early 90s, I think through a period of 6 years, this was I think in Time magazine or Life magazine, the article, it was an old article, carpal tunnel syndrome, which is in the wrist and the hand, went up in those 4 or 5 years, I think it was 4 or 5 years, went up 400% in America. 400%, that's huge. And why? You know, why? It wasn't, and they blamed it on repetitive stress, that more people are getting computers. But when you're doing a computer, does your wrist hurt? No. Worse, right? If they were going to hurt your wrist, a typewriter was more difficult. Computers don't hurt our wrists. So what was it? It was psychosomatic. It was a mass hypnosis that people started to get this disease called carpal tunnel in their wrists and hands, and it was like a collective disease that people started then, because many people were getting it, suddenly they got it. Same with low back pain. Interesting. When I was young, low back pain wasn't huge. I went with the studies of how it's progressed, and per capita, it wasn't as big. When I was I was born in '52, and as I was growing up, it wasn't so big. It wasn't 80% of people got low back pain once a year. It didn't happen that way. Now, low back pain is an epidemic. It's huge. Why? It's mass hypnosis. That people get low back pain, rather than admitting that they're afraid or admitting that they're sad or they're lonely, they somatize it in their back, it goes into their bodies, and they get low back pain. And it's partly just a mass hypnosis. A big part of it is. That's difficult to understand. But I experience it through working with people. How many people now are hypnotized into contraction and therefore into pain. And that hypnosis is psychosomatic.
Chciałbym Cię jeszcze zapytać, bo opowiadasz, uczysz nas pracować ciałem drugiej osoby, ale uczysz nas też tutaj na warsztatach medytacji, uczysz nas tańca, pokazujesz nam, jak pracować z naszym własnym ciałem. Jak ważna jest praca z własnym ciałem, żeby móc pomagać innym.
Okay, there's that old saying that healer, heal thyself, yeah? And unless we're really working on ourselves to become more conscious, more aware, more conscious and aware in our body, more sensual, more alive, more radiant, yeah, more fluid, more movable through dance, through meditation, the dynamic meditation, through silence. Unless we're working on ourselves, we become mechanics. Yeah, we might be good mechanics when we work on other people. We might have the method down, but we don't have that loving presence that is really needed to do really good work. So, my understanding, it's very important to learn the techniques and to really become as masterful as possible with all these techniques. Masterful as possible. And then once you start to get that understanding of the technique, what comes through is your loving presence, is your compassionate presence, is your silence, is your passion, is your aliveness, is your heartfelt connection to other people. That's what really comes through, and that's what affects people even more than the technique. But you got to learn the technique. It's no way around it. And it's beautiful to have, you have to have both. And I've gone to many body workers who were technicians and received sessions, and they did amazing technique, but I didn't get touched. Something changed in my body, but I didn't feel nourished in that same way or touched. That I was being touched by a sensual, loving man or woman. I didn't have that experience. I've been touched by people who don't have any technique, but they had great hands and they have a very loving presence. And they massaged me, and I was more moved by them. So Osho used to say that 90% of body work or massage is the loving presence, and 10% is the technique. That's hard for body workers to hear. And it was hard for me to hear for a long time. But I'm very interested in my trainings, I teach a lot of technique. But also I bring in the dynamic meditation, or I bring in dance, you know, as a way of moving the body. I bring in the unwinding as a technique, but also as a way of re-entering into one's own body.
So first love, second technique.
First love, second technique, but as learning, first learning the technique, but also learning how to love yourself and how to love other people.
Okay. Thank you very much for the interview.
Thank you very much for the interview also.